can machines like actually feel? You know, it's like this question that's always been around kind of like in the background, but now with AI just getting so much more advanced, it just feels so much more real, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, could our smartphones be walking around, with like broken hearts? Or, I don't know, maybe our robot vacuum cleaners are secretly doing like a little victory dance when they finish cleaning the living room.
Yeah.
Today, we are going to be diving into this excerpt from an article. It's called Yapajzika Vedugiler, Machinele Hisedibilir Mi,
Okay.
which translates to AI and emotions, can machines feel? For anyone who doesn't speak Turkish.
Right. Right.
Just to see if we can, maybe get a little bit closer to answering this question once and for all.
Yeah, it's a fascinating question, and it feels like it's getting trickier and trickier because I mean, we're starting to see AI do some pretty amazing things that really blur the lines.
Totally. Like, the article even talks about GPT-4,
Yeah.
GPT-4.
Yeah.
Writing these like super empathetic messages, almost like, like if a friend was like offering you a shoulder to cry on, But like, does that mean that GPT-4 is actually like feeling empathy?
I mean, that is the core question, isn't it? I think what we're seeing is AI getting incredibly good at simulating emotions based on all the data that it's been trained on, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like a really, really good actor who can convincingly, portray basically any emotion, but without necessarily actually feeling those emotions themselves.
So like basically GPT-4 is like the digital Meryl Streep of emotions, basically.
Yeah, exactly. I like that. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But this whole ability to simulate emotions, it has these huge implications, especially when you think about things like, mental health support, you know. Imagine an AI-powered therapist that's available 24/7, providing support to anyone who has a smartphone. I mean, that could be absolutely revolutionary when it comes to just like accessibility.
It could be, but I also just can't help but think about the the other side of that coin, the potential downsides.
Sure.
Like what about the risk of people, I don't know, becoming emotionally dependent on a machine that isn't actually capable of having genuine empathy, or like even worse, what if this kind of technology is used to, I don't know, manipulate people, like play on their emotions to get them to do something, or just for some other like ulterior motive or something.
Yeah, I think you're bringing up some really, really critical ethical concerns there, and this is why, going back to what we were saying before, this distinction between emotional simulation, right, and then true sentience is just so important.
Yeah.
Machines, they might be able to mimic our emotions in a really convincing way, but they're missing something really, really fundamental, and that is the biological hardware that underpins human emotions, right? Like we as humans have the limbic system, right?
Yeah.
With the amygdala and the hippocampus. It's like this whole orchestra of neurochemicals that is actually creating the experience of feeling.
Yeah.
Machines, they just don't have that.
It's funny you should say that, because I catch myself like sometimes actually feeling bad for my Roomba when it gets stuck.
Oh, really?
Like, like I almost feel sorry for it,
Wow.
and it's just a machine bumping around. But like, there's something about it that makes me want to, I don't know, like comfort it. Is that part of that anthropomorphism thing that you were mentioning earlier?
It absolutely is. Yeah. Yeah. We humans, we are just wired to project feelings onto things. I mean, even inanimate objects, right? And when these objects start behaving in ways that mimic human emotions, it can really amplify that effect, even if logically, like in our heads, we know that the machine isn't actually experiencing those feelings, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like you said, as you pointed out, this whole tendency that we have to anthropomorphize it can be exploited,
Right.
Think about AI companions, right? That are designed to be, like super empathetic, and people might form these really strong attachments to them, and end up divulging very personal information without really fully, grasping that they're actually confiding in an algorithm.
That is a little creepy when you put it like that.
Yeah.
But the article does mention this thing called the EU's AI Act, which focuses on transparency in AI, right?
Right.
So that would hopefully address some of these ethical issues.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The idea there is that people should always be aware, that they're interacting with a machine and not, not a genuine like sentient being, Transparency is just it's absolutely crucial for preventing deception and just potential harm, down the line.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
It seems like for now, based on what we know about AI and how it works,
Yeah.
genuine emotions in machines are still very much in the realm of sci-fi.
Yeah, yeah, and you know what? Even if an AI could, like perfectly mimic all of the outward signs of sadness, right?
Yeah.
Would it actually feel the same way that we do?
Yeah.
Would it experience that same sense of, heaviness? That feeling of like a broken heart. Like
Yeah.
that's where things get really philosophical.
And speaking of philosophy, the article brings up some really thought-provoking ideas like
Mm.
this thing called functionalism. So like the basic idea of functionalism is if a machine acts as if it has emotions,
Yeah.
like should we then consider it as actually having them?
Yeah, it's a really interesting concept, but then, you have these other arguments like the Chinese room,
Yeah.
which kind of challenge that whole idea.
Okay.
Imagine a chatbot, right? That can answer flawlessly like any customer service question that you throw at it.
Right.
On the surface, it seems like it understands your frustration, it understands your needs,
Right.
but in reality, it's just following this complex set of rules. It's manipulating symbols without any real comprehension.
So just because it can, act like the perfect customer service rep doesn't mean that it actually you know, cares that my order is messed up.
Exactly, exactly. And that's one of the key arguments against functionalism,
Right.
right? Mimicking behavior, even flawlessly, perfectly, it doesn't necessarily equate to genuine understanding or feeling.
Like you can teach a parrot to say, I'm sad,
Right.
but that doesn't actually mean that the parrot is feeling blue.
That's a perfect analogy. Yeah.
Okay, good.
But then, of course, you always have the more out there, radical ideas, right?
Right.
Like panpsychism, which proposes that consciousness might actually exist in unexpected places,
Yeah.
even potentially in machines, right?
Okay.
But that's veering into like really, really speculative territory.
So no robot tears of joy anytime soon then, basically.
Probably not. No,
Well,
but
yeah.
but even though AI might not be feeling emotions in the same way that we do, right?
Right.
The fact that it can simulate them so convincingly is raising, I think, some really really important questions for us. Questions about how we design and interact with this technology,
Hmm.
how we navigate these very complex ethical issues and how we protect ourselves, from potential harm.
It almost makes you wonder like what's more dangerous? You know,
Yeah.
machines actually developing emotions
Mm,
or humans, just forgetting that they
yeah.
don't. I mean, as this technology just continues to evolve,
Mm.
it's going to become harder and harder, to tell the difference between what's real and what's simulated.
Yeah, and that's exactly the conversation that I think we need to be having right now. The
Yeah.
future of our relationship with AI, it depends on us, being informed, being discerning, and maybe even a little bit skeptical.
Being skeptical never hurt
Oh,
anyone.
exactly.
Exactly. Well, on that note, we're going to have to wrap it up for today, but this has been another really great deep dive.
It has, yeah.
Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll catch you next time.
See you later.